Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the IAI ACCA sharing session, Public Sector Accountant Updates on Public Finance Management, Public Expenditure, and Fiscal Accountability and Good Governance. My name is Monica, and I'll be your host for today's session. In this lovely afternoon, I would like to greet IAI Council Member, Bapak Isnaeni Achdiat, ACCA Regional Lead Public Affair for APAC, Mr. Sajjeed Aslam, Country Manager Chief Representative of ACCA Indonesia, Ibu Julia Simatupang, Ibu Margustieny, Vice Chair of IAI KASP for period 2019 until 2022, Bapak Rahadian Widagdo, Member of IAI KASP for period 2019 until 2022, IAI Executive Director Ibu Elizarni Husin, IAI Director of Membership and Partnership Service, Bapak Edward Tanujaya, APA Executive Director, Bapak Auki Pratama, and Bapak Manish Kidwani. Also, IAI member, ladies and gentlemen. To open this session, let us hear the opening remarks from IAI Council Member, Bapak Isnaeni Achdiat. To Pak Isnaeni, the floor is yours.
Honorable Mr. Sajjeed Aslam, Regional Lead Public Affairs Asia Pacific Regions ACCA, Ms. Margustieny, Vice Chair IAI Public Sector Accounting Compartment, period 2019-2023, ACCA member and IAI member, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Praise to God Almighty for His blessing on us being able to organize the IAI ACCA Public Sector Sharing Sessions. Updates on public financial management, public expenditure, and fiscal accountability and good governance. Today's event is part of IAI Global Week. Thank you to ACCA for organizing today's event. This is a very important collaborations because IAI and ACCA have a mutual relationship in developing the accounting professions in Indonesia. In August 2009, we signed a memorandum of understanding with ACCA, which was then followed by a strategic partnership agreement in June 2014. This SPA was extended in April 2019, further highlighting both organizations' positive cooperations and successful collaborations for the professions. Together with ACCA, we share a commitment to enhance the quality of professional accountants in Indonesia and their role in contributing to the economy. IAI and ACCA have agreed on a strategic pathway to strengthen global recognitions of Indonesian professional qualifications. Ladies and gentlemen, related to our today webinar, I'd like to talk to you about a topic that is often overlooked in discussions of government policies and programs, that is fiscal accountability. Fiscal accountability refers to the responsibility of governments to manage public funds and resources in a transparent and efficient manner, while ensuring that these resources are used for the benefit of all citizens. It is a crucial aspect of good governance, and it is essential for promoting economic growth, social development, and overall well-being of a nation. Unfortunately, many governments around the world have failed to uphold their fiscal accountability obligations, leading to corruptions, mismanagement, and waste of public resources. This is not only undermines public trust in government institutions, but also hinders progress towards achieving sustainable development goals. We need to hold our elected officials and public institutions accountable for their use of public resources. This means that we must demand transparency in how public funds are being used and ensure there are adequate measures in place to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. Fiscal accountability also requires sound fiscal policies that are designed to promote economic growth and stability. Governments must prioritize investment in critical infrastructure education, healthcare, and other public services that can improve the quality of life for citizens and enhance their economic opportunities. In addition, fiscal accountability also means that governments must be fiscally responsible and sustainable as well. They must maintain a balance between spending and revenues, avoid excessive borrowing, and manage debt levels in a responsible manner. Ultimately, fiscal accountability is not just about numbers on a balance sheet, but about improving the lives of citizens. It is about ensuring that public resources are used in a manner that promotes the common goods and benefits all members of society. In conclusions, we all have a role to play in promoting fiscal accountability. As citizens, we must demand again the transparency and accountability from our elected officials and public institutions and hold them responsible for their use of public funds. Let us work together to promote fiscal accountability as a part of the development of public sector accounting so that we can build a brighter and a more prosperous future for all. Ladies and gentlemen, the development of public sector accounting is one of EI's focuses in carrying out its activities as a professional organization. EIE has a public sector accountant compartment, which is specifically an agent in development of public sector accounting in Indonesia. In the EIE strategic plan to 2022 and 2026, which is the next strategic plan of this organization. The development of public sector accounting is a focus in one of the pillars of the strategic plan to strengthen legal protection and professional practice of accountants in various sectors in the era of sustainability. At the end, I'd like to thank you for today's collaborative event. I hope that the synergy between EIE and ACCA will continue to be growth in order to develop the accounting profession to support the Indonesian economy. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be happy. Thank you.
Thank you for Pak Isnaeni Achdiat. I would like to invite Pak Isnaeni to have a group picture with Bapak Sajjeed and Pak Edo, Bu Titin, Ibu Julia, Pak Edward, Pak Oki, dan Pak Manis. Could you please join us to have a group picture? Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us start our discussion this afternoon. As the speaker, we have SCCA Regional Lead Public Affairs for APAC, Mr. Sajjeed Aslam. And this session will be led by Bapak Rahadian Widagdo, member of IAI KSP for period 2019 until 2022. To Pak Edo and Sajjeed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Monik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good afternoon, Mr. Sajjeed. We are very grateful right now to have Mr. Sajjeed Aslam right here, who attend from Pakistan, really, and can join with us in this seminar. And how are you, Mr. Aslam?
Thank you very much. Very loud and big here.
Oh, okay, thank you. And I'm also very honored being here among you, all of participants. Maybe we have thousands of participants because it is podcasting into the Instagram, IAI Instagram, and then we are here for we need to know, we want to know about PFM public finance management that you have already delivered. I mean, there's some assessment called PEFA, public expenditure, financial accountability assessment. And then Indonesia has already assessed 3 times, is it? 3 times from the 2007, 7 and 2008, and then 2011 and 2012. Then the latest is 2017 and 2018. And then PFM, we have maybe you can tell us later about how the PEFA assessment works, and then how the PFM, and then how it can improve our governance. But let me read his CV. Mr. Sajjeed Aslam is ACCA's Regional Lead Public Affairs Asia Pacific, and also a founding partner of investment advisory business, investor, and mentor for ESG tech and data, edtech, agri-tech, prop-tech, and e-commerce businesses. Such a broad area, is it? And then he's also professional accountant, has a vast experience in FMCG, telecom, and education sectors. He served as the CEO, CFO, Chief Business Development Officer, Public Affairs Personals, and functional lead for many multinationals. He has also served on the boards of management, consulting, education, telecom, technology, and food companies. And he started career in Pakistan with Nestle, and progressed into international roles. Other than Pakistan, live and work in Australia, Turkey, Korea, Indonesia. Oh, you live in Indonesia too. Uni Emirat Arab, and then Switzerland, Singapore, Malaysia, China, and East African region. Wow, cool. You travel a lot of countries. Without further ado, I would like to Mr. Aslam to deliver his presentation. And we begin later discussion and talk.
Thank you very much.
The time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. First of all, good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I've got a very good memory with Indonesia, and particularly Jakarta. I was here 20 years back. That's the important thing, that I was here. But most important thing, I got married when I was in Indonesia. So my family life actually started here. My mother, my wife, everybody was here. I was working with Nestle at that time. Very interesting time, very learning experience, a very different experience at that time. We still cook a lot of Indonesian food back home. Soup buntut is still one of our favorite stuff which we cook. Nasi goreng, soup iga. I think from a food perspective, we really, really loved all the food which we experienced in Indonesia, and we carried all the recipes back. So that's the love for Indonesia, what I have personally. And then a second thing, as an ACCA, when we look at Indonesia and we look at ASEAN as a whole, Indonesia is practically leading the way in many, many ways. Like if you look at the Indonesia from a adoption of accrual accounting and a balance sheet approach, it's leading the way. When we look at Indonesia from adopting the sustainability reporting, it's way advanced and it started way earlier. When we talk about the climate action and we look at the climate risk management at this stage from Indonesia, from a public sector perspective, the structure which we have seen as a plan, and the plans have got their own pillars, and the pillars have got strategy, and those strategy have already converted into the resource plan. And now we are talking about how to deploy it, right? So this is a very advanced form when we compare any other country in terms of their nationally determined contribution or national adaptation plan on a climate side. So Indonesia has got a lot to offer to the ASEAN and the rest of the world, how they have progressed that way. Another, I think, area where Indonesia should be very, very proud in terms of their public financial management, the way they have really compiled and consolidated or used the business combination as one of a tool, their state-owned enterprises. The 72 enterprises which they just have consolidated recently, and they got the limited assurance around it using the business combination and the technology of Python to really run that kind of consolidation or the business combination. And that's basically revealed that it's right now, these 72 organizations are carrying almost $650 billion worth assets. So that's create that kind of visibility and provide that resilience within the economy. When you unleash that kind of assets, what kind of resource you can generate in terms of cash. And the way the carbon markets or carbon stock exchange is being developed, the active financial market, which Indonesia already have, the collaboration they are building with the global organization, and they are trying to create the MOUs and interchangeability of those financial instruments. That's create a very strong base for the golden vision of 2045. If we are looking at Indonesia, and if we are looking at the number we were talking about as a high income country, somewhere close to $25,000 per capita GDP, we are talking about 7.5 times increase in the current level. So from 1 trillion to 7.5 trillion, that's require a very strong public financial management. This thing is not going to happen only with the private sector. It has to be a proper public-private partnerships. It has to be a proper fiscal accountability and responsibility. And that's what, ladies and gentlemen, our topic for today. So public financial management in Indonesia. So if we can move to the next one. So I'll give a little bit introduction around ACC and why we are so much concerned there. So, and resilient and inclusive public financial management system basically help build the public trust. The entire relationship within the country between citizen and state is trust. That whatever I'm going to do, whatever I'm paying as a taxes, whatever the services I'm paying for, ultimately the government is going to use all those resources in trust of public. And that's public trust is based on how those information or those transactions are recorded, reported, and shared back with the citizens. And that's where that public trust is established. Can go to next. Can we just move quickly on that? So if you look at the strategic outcome of a public financial management, the first thing is the aggregate fiscal discipline and the strategic allocation of resources. So this is the first outcome when we look at the public financial management. And the second part comes to the resources and the budget allocation in terms of that. And the third comes to the efficient use of these resources for service delivery. The ultimate outcome is the service delivery. And when we look at these strategic outcome, and that's important to understand how many people get involved. If we are talking about the three strategic outcome, so you will find out in the Ministry of Finance and in a couple of the ministry, on the top level, there are people who are taking care of that. It's a three strategic outcome. These are the KPIs, and I'm looking at it. But as soon as you go further, below those three strategic outcomes, there are 7 pillars. And those 7 pillars are, or the KPIs around those 7 pillars are managed by more people. So there are more people who get engaged and involved in that process. And those 7 pillars have got 31 indicators in the PFM system. That means more people comes into play. And when you go further below at the lowest level, there are 94 dimensions for those 31 indicators. So that means more people get engaged there. Now, when you were 1 or 2 people, when there are a very small number of people, it's easy to have a common understanding and what you really want to do. But once you reach to the 94 dimensions, then to build that common understanding and a common system and the resilience in terms of the processes and technology, that becomes a challenge. And this is how the PEFA comes into play. So what we are looking at there, the 3 strategic outcomes, 7 pillar, 31 indicator, and 94 dimension, that's the framework which is called the golden standards. That's the framework which PEFA brings to the play. And all the key development agency use this one single golden standard to really measure the health of any PFM system for any country. Can we move further? And looking at the number of people who are getting engaged and involved in this process, that brings the second part, the professionalization. You cannot expect people really to get into such a complicated and complex environment of finance in today's world, and the accountability and the responsibility and the governance and the oversight which we have to go through in today's world, if the people are not professionally qualified, if they are unable to really conduct their work with the right understanding and the common understanding, most importantly. Professionalization doesn't mean that everybody has to be a chartered accountant or professional accountant or qualified, but they should, at least at a lowest level, they should have a right kind of technician knowledge. So whether we talk about certificates, we talk about accounting qualification, whether we talk about the membership of the professional accounting bodies, that require a certain knowledge base, a relevant knowledge base, which can bring the consistency and common understanding at all levels. So now go back and think, 3 strategic outcome, very few people, 94 dimension, a lot of people, and that will require to go for a professionalization using a common understanding and bringing the consistency there. Can we move next? Why we need to do that? Why it's important to bring that professionalization? Why it's important to review your PEFA assessment and make implementation plan around it? There are certain sustainable growth, which is a demand or which is a aim for every government as we speak. And that's basically how they really define that sustainable and inclusive growth. It's through the GDP growth and the HDI. HDI is a Human Development Index. So how you can really bring that inclusivity is if your GDP is growing, your HDI should grow at the same time. Otherwise, the GDP might be dependent on a very few people or a very few industries. So you will see the higher GDP in terms of size and the growth rate, but the benefit will not be going down to the rest of the citizen. So when we are measuring that, GDP in its isolation may not be a very effective measure if we are looking at the inclusive growth. Then the global trade. Global trade requires you to follow the certain global standards. Child labor can't happen. Fair trade has to be there, right? So these are the parameters which the global trades bring to the table. If you are generating more carbon emission, you have to bear the cost for that. You cannot make other countries to bear the cost for it. Fair trade, right? So global trades, whether it's in a digital form or in a conventional form, that's require adherence to a certain goals. And then there's a debt, there is a funding, there are taxes. So for the sustainable inclusive growth, these are the key parameters which any country has to follow. The biggest risk which we have to really address is the climate action. Right now, if we are if you are driving a car in Indonesia, after 7 minutes, the smoke you have generated there, the carbon emission become a global issue because it gets into the atmosphere and it's a global issue then. So climate action is one of the area which not a single country, not a single government can address, or not a single community or individual can address. It's a collective responsibility. And if you are talking about the collective responsibility, again, you need a very strong, resilient PFM system so you can go out and talk to the rest of the government and they should be able to trust you, right? That whatever you are saying, you have a capacity to deliver and you have a resources, or whatever the resources you are deploying that are going to be used for the purpose which is intended. And then there's a lot of demand and oversight coming up. Your citizens are now very, very aware. They use social media to really hold the governments accountable, or at least they share their frustration using that. And which means the political equity will be compromised if the transparency is not there. And then there is a lot of other oversight agencies, which include World Bank, that include UN, that's include IMF, that's also include within the government, they have parliament and they have got their own oversights there. So putting everything together, that's what the PFM system is supposed to address, because there is a certain growth aspiration, there is certain demand, and there are certain risks which we need to address over the period using a very resilient PFM system. Can you go next? And digitization is the one which become an enabler for everything to do it in a more transparent way and in a more robust way. So that's also an important element when we are putting together a PFM system around. Next, please. There are three areas which are important to understand when we are talking about the PFM system. The legislation is an important element, operational processes is an important element, and people, the human capability is one of an important element. And these are the key pillar for any PFM system, if you look at that. Next. If you look at ACCA, ACCA has got 67,000 members who are working in the public sector. In the last year, we have supported 539 organization, public sector entities in terms of their objective, their aspiration, whether it's a talent need, whether it's a PFM reform side of it, or whether it's a very fundamental retention and hiring process. ACCA has delivered 50 plus projects in 36 countries. And these projects, even there was one project in Indonesia on the IPSAS side in 17-18, where ACCA was engaged as well, when Indonesia was transitioning from cash-based accounting to accrual accounting. Next. These are the key institutions which we are working with globally. So that's included a lot of development agencies as well as some of the accounting bodies there. Next. So these are the couple of recent projects out of those 50, which include the public debt management. There's a professionalization of within the subnational governments, and there's also support for the professional accounting body to really develop the profession in the particular country like Rwanda. Can we move next? We are also working with China in terms of bringing out what are the latest development within the profession. In Indonesia, like I mentioned, that it's around working with the SAI in terms of the IPSAS. Kazakhstan again is one of our country where we are working on IPSAS implementation and adoption. Next. Now, these are the important areas. ACCA produced a lot of reports on the public sector side. So very recently, and if you go there, there are almost 160, 170 reports which are available on ACCA website free of cost, starting with a very fundamental public sector technical side and going into the psychology and economy and the framework side of it. So green budgeting is the latest toolkit which ACCA has produced. The global guideline around the professionalization in public sector of finance, this ACCA and IPAC has produced that report. Leading recovery role of senior finance leadership in public sector, that's a report which ACCA and CANZ have produced together. So, but if you visit ACCA website, you find a lot of reports which are available, and people can access that, and it's free of cost resource which is provided by ACCA. Some are core ACCA, some are in a partnership with different institutions. Next, please. Now, this is again one of the important elements when we are looking at the resilience of any public sector or any government. So usually we use the terminology around the GDP to debt ratio as one of a key measure once we get to the liability side of it. But if you look at the overall structure, so there was a misconception for a while that the lower debt to GDP ratio means the country has got more resilience. But over the period, we have learned that even the 60% debt to GDP ratio may not be as good as the 250% debt to GDP ratio, because just that how you deploy that debt is an important element. If you are just using that debt for the consumption purposes and not for the productivity, so end of the day, it's a net liability. So even 60% of the GDP, if it become a net liability, then you are not in a good shape. But with the 250% debt to GDP ratio, if the public sector net worth is sitting in a positive side, because the way that debt is deployed, that is generating more income and asset on the public or a government balance sheet, so the economy is more resilient. So I think one of the challenge which we are seeing going forward, that how to really measure the resilience of the economy, it's not going to be the debt to GDP ratio, it's going to be the public sector net worth. And that's what IMF is also promoting now. So that a lot of countries have to start their transition towards IPSAS adoption as well as the balance sheet and accrual approach around. Next, please. So this is one of the example how UK balance sheet has evolved. And if you look at from the simplistic one, liability and asset is one way to look at that. But if you get into the more detail of it, so you will find a lot of liabilities which normally are not recognized, like the pension liability, which is the future liability, and it's not accounted for unless until we go for the accrual accounting. A lot of assets are not accounted for, like non-financial asset, because they have spent out and they are no more on the balance sheet, but they're still generating a certain benefit for the citizen. So over the period, if you look at the UK as a one of a example in terms of the net worth, so we are seeing here a negative net worth as we speak. So if you look at the resilience of the UK economy, there is a certain challenge which we can see there, and a lot of predictions which are coming in terms of going forward, how the UK economy look like. It's not very encouraging. Can we move next? I would like to spend some time here. This is Indonesia. This is a PEFA assessment of Indonesia. And if you remember, initially we said there are 3 strategic outcomes and the 7 pillars. So if you look at on the top, you will find those 7 pillars, and in the bottom, you will see that 31 indicators. So anything which is C or below is alarming, right? Anything which is B plus and A, that's something where Indonesia is doing very, very well. So if you look at from a budget reliability perspective, that's been how we are preparing budget and how we are doing the actual. So is there an outturn, whether we are in line with it or not? It's a forecasting and assumption. So you look particularly on a PI3, which is a revenue forecast, Indonesia is not doing very well. But if we are looking at overall even expenditure budget, so the total budget reliability is question mark. It's not question mark in terms of spending. We are talking right now, the forecasting and actual spending and the variances which we are seeing there. If you look at the transparency of the public finances, so you will find in some of the area it's doing very, very well, like publishing the annual financial accounts at the national and the subnational government. But if you look at from some of the KPIs or some of the indicators, you will find that whether it was timely, whether it was within the 9 months, and whether there was a limited assurance or a full assurance available. So there are certain areas which require improvement. Management of assets and liabilities, and particularly in terms of the assets management or investment management, there are certain challenges which we see. So I'll not go into the details, but I'll encourage everybody, go online, download the PEFA assessment for 2017 and look at that. I just picked up one summary of it. Every indicator has got its own detail and it goes up to the 94 dimension. It's a very good report to really look at the current state. Interesting part, it's not something which you should be worried about, because based on this report, it has created a visibility, and the government of Indonesia is planning between 2020 to 25 to address the issues which are most critical. And they are also got the World Bank support and the development agency support there. One of the area which is critical is the external scrutiny and audit. If you look on the extreme right purple side, so you will see the PI 31 is something which we should be focusing on, because ultimately that's the one which creates the trust between state and citizen. Because when they see the assured values and those are reported timely, that's create a certain a trust side there. There's another area which is important is the service delivery. If we will go to the dimension level, like the 94 dimension, you will see some of the challenges. So there's a spending available, but it's not generating enough quality of the service which government is supposed to deliver. Can we move to next? So if you look at the overall framework that when we are looking at PFM or PFM reform side of it, so there are 3 key pillars. Legislation is a one pillar, technology is another one, and a human capital. So those 3 pillars basically help to reform. I picked up only 5 key areas which are most common and the most important in most of the countries. It's the fiscal discipline, like how the empowerment is done, like between the national and the subnational government. Indonesia face certain challenges once it's come to the fiscal empowerment and the distribution of the resources and how it can be spent and who can spend that one. Equity and efficiency in the resource allocation. Because of a fiscal empowerment, second issue, you see the efficiencies and equity issue. And then the budget issue, execution and the service delivery. So whatever we have decided, is it really creating that value or not? So there has to be a performance audit side of it. And the asset and liability management. Again, going to the example of the debt to GDP ratio, how Indonesia is working towards the liability management and how those debt is being deployed and what kind of debt is being raised as well. And then there's another area which is becoming very important, that whatever the budgeting we are doing, is it green? Is it integrating the climate risk as well? Is it related with the climate finances and the SDGs? Are those incorporated within those budget and the PFM system? So those are the important reforms and the question. But to get there, 3 pillar legislation which create that enablement, an ecosystem, your technology and the processes which create that transformation, and the human capital and the quality of the human capital and professionalization of that human capital, which really create that capacity to really drive rest of the staff. So human capital or HDI, Human Development Index, these are the important element when you are assessing an economy. When you are looking at the PFM system, it's all about that, what quality of human capital exists within that ecosystem. Can you hear me? So when we are looking at the professionalization, there's a very good report from ACC and it identified 5 key steps. There's a political will. That's a very important one because it's a legislative process. There are structures. Then there's a process of adoption. There's an implementation and there's a continuous development and improvement. We cannot go overnight and say, this is the new system and tomorrow that's how we're going to do that. There has to be a change management process. There has to be a consultation. There has to be pilot. There has to be certain success. And then there has to be certain scaling as well. And these are the 5 key steps. And if you go into the report, that will give a very good view around what we need to do under each step. So again, just to summarize, if you can go next, I think that's the last one. So if just to summarize it, the PFM system is a base for any economy to really grow on a certain pace. And if we have got a very aggressive and aspiring targets like Indonesia has, the PFM system is the one which has to be very resilient and very inclusive. And that comes back to a certain responsibility to professional accountant, really go there and contribute. Contribute as an employee, contribute as a consultant, but contribute as an institution, as a member of that society as well. There's a lot of contribution you can do, which may not require a very formal interaction or employment or a consulting assignment. It's just raising the voice, sharing the framework and sharing the knowledge itself, generate a lot of visibility and advice for people who are involved. ACC strongly believes that we should avoid the waste like we were talking earlier. So a lot of resources and a partnership which we are building is just with the vision that anything which exists right now, how we can really deploy it rather than develop it. So deployment and the collaboration is the key area which ACC should be contributing. And Indonesia is a very important economy within ASEAN, and ASEAN as a region is a very important region for the rest of the world to really see a growth, positive growth. So thank you very much, and we will go for some question and answer session. Thank you.
Okay, give applause to Mr. Sajjeed Aslam. It's such a comprehensive presentation, I think. Yeah, but we're glad to take some question from you all, but I want to ask for the first time. There's some slightly changes framework in PEFA report. As I know in 2011, right? 2011, they use different methods, different assessment within 2016. Could you elaborate what is the difference and how it can improve the assessment?
I think I'm not. Yeah, so I may not be really qualified to go into the very much detail and technicality, but just to give you one example and a parallel is it's just like the accounting standards, the way it was evolving around the world and still evolving. So I think that's exactly that methodologies goes. If you look at the reports which were based on 2007 or 2011 framework versus the one which are based on the 2016 framework, I think the 2016 framework reports, the reports based on 2016 framework are more robust, very to the point. And I think from a visibility and a structure perspective, it has improved. But the most importantly, the overall process of planning and consultation and the team who really get engaged in that and the independent review, which is incorporated within the 2016 and the effectiveness of that, I think that has really worked well in the 2016 framework. But I'm sure in another 2 years, we find further evolution and the framework will be improving. I think that's the nature of the beast here. So it has to improve. It has to evolve.
Okay, thank you. And then you said before that it is using like building blocks methodology when we get the score, even though in the one component we got the A and B, but in the same component we get D, and it is score D plus, and it is not like we get C or B. Yeah, it is interesting. It's very interesting. And then yeah, compared to other countries, yeah, what do you think Indonesia condition compared to other countries in terms of PEFA report?
I think Indonesia is in a great shape right now. If we compare with most of the countries who are in a similar situation, there are a lot of challenges which should not be there. So I think in some areas, Indonesia has got a great strength, like the accrual accounting is a great strength. Annual financial reporting, publishing those reports is still a great strength. Having a limited review or a external review there for most of the report, even if it's not timely, it's still there, right? So that's still a very positive thing. Because of the accrual accounting, the management and visibility of assets and liability is something which is very, very great. So I'll not name it, but there are a lot of developed countries who are unable to get there in terms of the accrual approach. So I think Indonesia, when you look at the PEFA assessment, the key benchmark, what you have achieved and how you are doing it, right? So there are a lot of countries who haven't achieved that. So if you compare them with Indonesia, so I think Indonesia is doing great, but is it enough with the aspiration we have? Right? So no other countries is looking at the 7 times of GDP right now and do not have a potential and a vision to do that on such a pace with such a large population, right? So if the aspiration is there, then the resources and the infrastructure and the governance structure has to really complement that kind of aspiration. So yes, there is a certain work which we need to do in Indonesia. And I think there is a certain structure exists. It's not going to be an easy journey, but it's a journey which is worth. So, but it has to be a collective effort. It can't be done by government in isolation. It can't be done with the one country. I think there are a lot of countries who are willing to help because they also have a dependency on economy of Indonesia.
So in the other way, it is we are competing with ourselves. Yeah, it's not like we are forcing continuous improvement. And one more, Mr. Aslam, you mentioned that external scrutiny, this area should be improved. Yeah, and I read in the PEFA report there is some hearing on audit findings. Yeah, that can be conducted by legislature. What kind of this what kind of hearing is it? I mean, I never heard about it before. Yeah.
Couple of things. If we pick up particularly from Indonesia perspective, so when there's number one, there's SAIs which are independent, right? So SAIs are independent, they produce a report, and then the parliament is the one which has to really review that and provide a feedback or execute whatever the dispositions which are required. So if you look at Indonesia, I think most of the reports are not qualified. Like most of the report does not have a material issue which requires a certain disposition. I'm comparing it with some of the country who have got the audit report with 397 pages on the issues and the qualifications from the audit side. Hearing is a regular process, and that process has to be there. And hearing process does not mean something is significantly wrong. Hearing process is there. There is somebody who would like to understand it better and probe it better and make sure the public trust is there. And these hearings can help public even to understand things in a better way. So I think as a process, I would say it's a very good oversight process, which has to be there with the SAIs, with the different departments, and based on the audit reports, these need to be called in. And if you look at the Europe or US, some of the questions or hearings which are happening with the public sector entity or public sector professionals, that's public, right? So they are like telecasting that on the TV and in a live form. But what it brings the confidence of citizen on the system. So I think from a process perspective, I would definitely would go in that it's a good process to build that trust which citizen want to have on the state.
Build transparency as well, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Probably there's some question from the audience here, or probably there's we're taking question also from the Instagram. Yeah, can anyone check it? Okay, Miss Dini.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Edo and Mr. Sajjeed Aslam. Thank you. Really good presentation before, and we really enjoy the data that you provide in this presentation. It's really, I really like to ask the question because you already mentioned that the transparency, accountability, and then our people, our citizens' awareness, and then demand for transparency is really high right now. And then the power of netizen, power of the people within social media. And it's also related with my final thesis in my school. I would like to research about citizen participatory audit. Yes, so how we can make increase the accountability, but involving the citizen to help the oversight agencies such as Supreme Audit Institution and so on. I would like to ask him for your perspective about this citizen participatory audit, and then what is the factor that could help enabler ecosystem in Indonesia to implement this kind of engagement with public. Thank you, Mr. Sajjeed.
I think that's one of my favorite area when we talk about, because ultimately it's all about state and citizen relationship. That's, if we are living in Indonesia, so we are living it because we believe in that, and we believe in that, so that's when we believe in that state. And the state has got certain responsibility and citizens have got certain responsibility. To best of my understanding as we speak, Indonesia does not have the citizen participation in any legislative or oversight process. The first thing is the change in the legislation. The countries who have got that citizen participation, it's not start from an oversight, it start from a budget and the planning process. So that when Indonesia is working right now on a 25-45 plan, so the first thing we expect that the plan should be published, and it should be published for 3 to 4 months for the feedback from citizens and the professionals in a different areas, like from professional accountant, from lawyers, from doctors, from engineers, from like the human sciences. So anybody who really interested in understanding what the state is planning for them for the 20 years, so that plan has to be there. The second part, that plan has to be supported by a certain budget, and that budget should also come for the citizen feedback. And that budget might require, and the plan might require, a certain legislative changes at a national or subnational level. So those legislation should also come for the consultation, and they should be published, and the citizen should be able to see that what are the changes happening in the law to enable that plan and to really use or create the empowerment for that budget spending. And then it comes to the second level where the annual report should be published, which, by the way, Indonesia does, right? And now it comes to that report is published. Can you participate and you comment on that, whether you are happy or not with it? Can you provide an analysis and the feedback? And based on your analysis and feedback, is there any committee or in a parliamentary jurisdiction who can take action around it? That's again a legislative process which has to take place. And then if there is an audit or oversight body has got a certain objection, or they have qualified a report, if we talk in accounting language. So can you comment and debate and hold somebody accountable through any legislative process for that qualification, or I would say for that negligence or oversight or omittance of that, whatever the oversight they were supposed to provide. So I think that's the legislative process which empowered the citizen in terms of engagement. And then there's a second part is the accountability of the elected government and the public sector professionals, how your feedback is going to impact their next steps, the intervention side of it. So I think it's a legislation, but it's again require a maturity around citizens as well. It's require a certain professionalism. If you open it up to everybody who is qualified or not, they will have an opinion. I will have an opinion on an annual report, but whether my opinion should matter or not, that's how I really present it. How this entire participation process is managed by the community, who really moderate that kind of sessions, how that local level politics really play in that, and how mature people are to really provide that feedback. So I think this process is not only the legislative one, is definitely the empowerment side of it, but the evolution and the maturity of those people who are going to participate is also an important area where the politics and the local, especially local politics, have to contribute in terms of that participation.
Okay. Any other question from the audience, maybe? Or there's some question in the Instagram, probably? No? There's no? Okay, we still have like 5 minutes before the closing remarks. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Manish. I'm an ACCA member and also a CA member, CA Indonesia, and also represent the member community of Indonesia for ACCA. You know what makes me interested meeting Sajjeed since yesterday and having interesting conversations is giving new opportunities for professional accountants who are probably at the moment watching this and thinking, oh, I'm operating in the private sector. This talks about public sector. So I want to ask Sajjeed to spare some time to talk about what opportunities chartered accountants, CA Indonesia, ACCA members in Indonesia, how can we participate? Is it through public-private projects, the PPPs, or is it a requirement to have certain certifications? How can we participate and how can we help? That's what I want to ask.
Thank you. I think even as a private sector, the most important thing is to be vigilant and see where your overall public financial management is going from a direction perspective, right? Because wherever it's going to have a direct impact on individual as an employee, and it will have a direct impact on the businesses as well. I'll just give you a one direction and a one key point. Have we started thinking about the carbon tax? Just imagine, because your country is a signatory to the Paris Agreement, and they have already created their climate action based on a certain pillars and strategy. And those strategy also include a certain discussion at the moment around the carbon tax. And just imagine if today you are using your fuel 10,000 or 15,000 a liter, and it becomes suddenly with the carbon tax, it's become 150,000 per liter. Does it impact you? Does it require you to start thinking and talking in the right way? Start getting engaged with the government as a business or an individual, that how you can contribute towards that climate action, the resilience, the adaptation, and the carbon taxes or incentive, whatever it's coming, how you can create opportunity even within the private sector. But that will when happen? When you get engaged with the public sector, start looking ahead, like what we normally ACCA talk about, think ahead, think in a 5 years term and a 4 years term, and be very, very alert, because the era which we are living in, a lot of things are going to change. Study about that, what's happening in EU, what's happening in US right now. And that is going to happen in Indonesia at some point of time. Or Indonesia may be ahead of them, how you can really leverage that opportunity to create a consulting assignment for yourself, for Europe, for US, for Thailand, for Singapore, because in some areas, Indonesia is way ahead. So like sustainability reporting and regulation, which is already there, that's a one opportunity really to understand that regulation and help Thailand, Singapore, and other countries really to implement it in the way Indonesia is trying to do. Right? So there are opportunities around it, but the most importantly is from a risk management and opportunity lens, which you need by engaging with the public sector. Not necessarily you are the one who has to deliver something, but by engaging them, you will able to provide your feedback, but most importantly, you will be able to understand what's coming in and whether it's a risk or opportunity for you as an individual or for your business. So I think these are the key opportunities where individuals or a professional accountant should get engaged in the PFM in a one way or other. It's an important area because it's going to impact everybody. Public sector contributes almost close to 40% of global GDP. So you cannot ignore 40% of the global GDP and how it's going to be managed. You have to get involved, engage, and see that if you are not contributing directly, you have to watch it to make sure that you are protected.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aslam and Mr. Manich. Is there any, probably we can take one more question before we wrap up this session. Is there anyone? Probably we have like 13,000 people who watch. No, I mean, in Instagram. Probably we're glad to take the question in Instagram as well. Okay. Okay. If not, probably I can sum up our talk today before I also ask your final remarks later on. Yeah, professional accountant, yeah, as you say, as you ask, is also play important role in PFM, yeah, in PFM to ensure public credibility, yeah, public trust, and financial report credibility. And then you said that Indonesia is also have good postures in PFM actually, but there's might be some area of improvement in one or two component, and then it needs some political will, and then good strategy, and also action in improving and its implementation of the PFM. And then thank you very much for your presentation, and then you answering questions very well. Before we end this session, I would like to ask you final remarks.
No, thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm not sure how you find that session. Very good questions as well. And this is a wonderful topic which is very close to my heart. End of the day, it's all about why we exist as accountants and why we exist as a human being, really to contribute and evolve the society. I think as an accountant, we should be a very strong voice how the PFM is being shaped. And the one thing which we should be very, very vigilant that there shouldn't be any legislation, regulation, or move or a framework which become very monopolistic, right? So a lot of time we have seen the overall legislation changes which leads to a certain monopolistic structure, and then there are a certain vested interested party who take that benefit. So we can still see a lot of growth in the GDP, but that compromised the HDI. So keep an eye as a professional accountant on the GDP, it's important, but on the HDI at the same time. So any legislative change, any PFM structure, which is you feel is benefiting a very small group, and it's not inclusive enough, raise your voice. You should have an opinion, and your opinion should be very, very objective. And if you collectively raise that voice, I'm sure it can make a change. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sajjeed Aslam. Give applause for Mr. Sajjeed Aslam. Yeah, and then let's wrap up our session. I will give it back to the MC.
Thank you very much for Pak Edo and Pak Sajjeed. I would like to invite both of you to stand up and receive a token appreciation that will be delivered by Bapak Isnaeni Achdiat. Pak Isnaeni, could you please deliver a token appreciation from IAI to our speaker and moderator for this afternoon? Let's give big round applause for our speaker this afternoon. Next for our moderator. Now group picture, 3 of you. Maybe Sajjeed, please bring. Thank you very much. You may return to your seat. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a closing remark will be delivered by Ibu Margustieny, the Vice Chair IAI KSP for period 2019 until 2022. For Ibu Margustieny.
Honorable Mr. Isnaeni Achdiat, IAI National Council Member, Mr. Sajjeed Aslam, Regional Lead Public Affairs Asia Pacific Region, ACCA, and ACCA member and IAI member, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Praise to the presence of God Almighty for His blessing. We have just held IAI ECCA Public Sector Sharing Session, Updates and Public Financial Management, Public Expenditure and Fiscal Accountability and Good Governance. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for joining us to this insightful webinar on public financial management. Your presence and active participation have contributed to making this event a great success. As we come to the end of this webinar, it is important to reflect on the key takeaways from our discussion today. We have learned about the importance of public finance management in ensuring transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the use of public resources. We have also discussed the different strategies and tools that can be used to enhance public finance management, such as budgeting, allocation of resources budget, and service delivery. I believe that the materials and points of view that we have discussed today will be a great benefit to all of us. It is my hope that the knowledge of insight gained from this webinar will be applied in your respective organization and countries. By doing so, we can work toward creating a culture of good governance and sound financial management, which will ultimately lead to sustainable development. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our distinguished panelists and speakers who shared their expertise and insight with us. I would also like to thank the ACCA for making this event possible. I hope that the collaboration between IAI and ACCA will continue to be established in order to increase the contribution of accounting profession in the national economy. Finally, I would like to encourage all of you to stay connected and continue to engage discussion and activities related to public financial management. Together, we can make a difference and contribute to building a better future for our communities and nations. See you again in the next edition of IAI Global Week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be happy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Ibu Margustieny for your closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the session. On behalf of IAI and SCCA, we would like to deliver our sincere gratitude to our speaker, moderator, and all of the participants. Thank you for joining us. My name is Monica Nabilia. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and hope to see you in another lovely event. Thank you.